Hi, it's Mike Stevenson here. So this video is about a question that one of the guys who subscribes to my YouTube channel asked recently, and it was quite a cool question. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a video about it. I love getting questions where we can do have a bit of a discussion about different options, which is one of my favorite kind of architecture questions. So the question in this case was. My friend had an Oracle database on premise. They've got a number of different options they're considering about how to pull out, probably, let's say, 1,000 records they want to pull out the database and then integrate them into another system. So there's a number of discussions about things like data factory, logic apps, and other approaches. And the question, when you look at the logic app specific option, how would you connect to the database, and what would be involved in that, and what are the different pros and cons? So I thought I'd just show some of the approaches that we've got available in Azure. So here we've got option one, where we have the JDBC connector that we can use to connect to the Oracle database. So in Logic Apps, it's quite handy, this connector. So I wasn't really that familiar with it in Logic App Standard, but it runs on the app service plan, or the plan that you have your Logic apps connected to, which is a big advantage here. So imagine in this case, we configure the connector. My workflow calls the built-in JDBC connector. And for this connector, you have to have some prerequisites installed on the plan. So there's a link up at the top here where I've just linked to the Microsoft article that talks a little bit about this. And the key thing is, once you've got that installed and you've got the connectivity in place, you would call from the JDBC connector, and it goes via the app service plan, and the traffic would route into your VNet if you've got Logic Apps VNet integrated. So that would mean in this case, there's a site-to-site VPN. So the connectivity could be routed through that VPN to the on-prem network, where we could query the Oracle database. So in this case, if you've got the right network routing configured, the right firewall rules to allow the subnet that your Logic app integrates into to be able to call through to the Oracle database, you've got line of sight right through. You should be able to use the JDBC connector. And I quite like this approach because obviously it's using fairly out-of-the-box functionality. JDBC is fairly standard tech that people are going to be very used to using. There's not a huge amount of work and parts involved. There's not different components you need to install. And really it's just a case of if you get the networking configured correctly, this should work okay. I think I haven't tried this option with things like different security models. So I'd probably, if you were going to try this, just maybe call out that you might have to just double check there wouldn't be any restrictions around security models for connecting to the database. So just be, that's maybe a gotcha to watch out for. But if it's a fairly vanilla scenario, I think this should be good. Now, the next option we have is if we use the managed Oracle database connector. So this is where things sometimes confuse people because of the different networking routes. So here we won't be going via the VNet integration for the Logic app, because this is actually a managed cloud connector. So the workflow would use the connector, but then it calls out externally to the Cloud API connector that would live as a resource in Azure. And then from here, this connector, you would have configured it with the data gateway, and that would then route through a server you've got on premise, and then you would connect to the Oracle database. Now, one point to note is for many customers, it might be the case the on-prem data gateway lives as a VM in the cloud, and then you would just route it through the VNet and site-to-site VPN. So there's a number of different ways the traffic could route here. But the key difference here is that you do need this on-prem data gateway server if you use the Oracle managed connector. So there is an extra component involved, which may slightly complicate this scenario. Okay, the next option we have, so now we're going to lower level options. So if you wanted to on Logic App Standard, you can use the service provider model and you can build your own custom connector. So you're building your own built-in connector where you would have a language like C# that your workflow calls, your code executes, and you would have to put in various DLLs for the Oracle connectivity. But at this point, your code executes, and you can call through the app service, through the VNet integration, and through to the database. Now, my gut feel is this probably, while it is very doable, this is probably not going to be a popular option because that kind of idea of building adapters often gets really complicated. So you would end up building ideally you'd want quite a reusable adapter. And I think the code for that would get quite complex quite quickly. So I think people probably would shy away from this approach and probably would go back to one of the other two. There is another approach that's probably a little bit simpler than this one that I think people might consider. So because Logic App Standard has inline functions, basically you can write some code that runs as a function and it lives inside the same application as the workflow. So here I could call my function, I could upload some DLLs that would be usable for the connectivity, and then my function code would go the same networking route through the app service, through the VNet integration, through the VPN, and to the Oracle database. Now, I think this would be quite a pragmatic approach. It's probably fairly simple to do. The one thing you might want to watch for is there's probably some constraints around function execution that might give you a few guardrails that you have to make sure you play within. So just watch out for things like timeouts and that kind of thing that might affect what you want to do. So for me, my preferred approach is probably going to be that JDBC connector by default because it's out of the box, straightforward, simple. You will have to upload the prerequisites, but I'm sure you can do that with something like a Terraform or Bicep script. And hopefully this video just gives you a few ideas of the different options you can take, whether it's out of the box, pragmatic, cloud connector. It's just understanding that there's slight nuances depending on which one you pick and which one's right for your organization. But I quite like this JDBC built-in connector, which I hadn't really noticed before, but I think it's probably a good one to start with for most people. Thank you for listening to today's video. Cheers.